Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, make sure you drop your thoughts and the lessons you took from this story in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. I am a 29-year-old man working in digital marketing for a mid-size agency in Austin, earning about $78,000 annually. It is not wealthy by any measure, but it is comfortable. I drive a 2018 Honda Accord, live in a one-bedroom apartment downtown, and I had been growing a side business, a digital marketing consultancy, during evenings and weekends whenever I had spare time. My ex, Aaliyah, a 27-year-old woman, worked part-time at a high-end boutique, making maybe $26,000 while supposedly taking business classes online through a questionable program. She never finished a single course and eventually stopped logging in altogether. We had been together for 2.5 years. With hindsight, I realized I was essentially funding her lifestyle. Our monthly rent was $1,100, and I consistently paid $750 of it. I bought groceries, dinners at restaurants, the expensive skincare products she said she needed for work, designer clothes that cost more than my car payment, weekly nail appointments, and monthly spa treatments. The red flags were visible from day one, but she was strikingly attractive, and I was not thinking clearly. Aaliyah often talked about networking events where she would disappear for hours and come home at 2 o'clock in the morning smelling like cologne I did not own. When I asked about these events or who she was meeting, she flipped it around with manipulation. I was accused of being paranoid and controlling. She said she could not help it if successful men tried to impress her with gifts and experiences. My best friend, Terrence, a 30-year-old man in pharmaceutical sales, has no filter and a perfect radar for nonsense. He warned me relentlessly that I was being used as a bank account while she tested other options. He told me I was ignoring red flags. I refused to believe it because I was infatuated and invested. One Tuesday night in March, I was making dinner, grilled chicken and roasted vegetables because I find cooking relaxing after a long day. Aaliyah sat at our small dining table with a glass of sparkling water, fidgeting like she was preparing to deliver bad news. She began with the classic line, "I have been thinking about us," and my stomach dropped. Nothing good ever follows those words. She said maybe we were better as friends. I set down my spatula and stared at her. She would not make eye contact, just stared at her phone. She said she needed space to grow as a person. She called me comfortable and safe, but said she needed excitement and adventure. It was a rehearsed speech. The translation was obvious. She found someone with a larger bank account. Most men would beg, argue, or promise the moon. Something in me clicked. Maybe it was months of conversations with Terrence, or maybe I finally developed a backbone. I said, okay, and nothing else. The look on her face was priceless, as if I had ruined the script. She asked if that was it. I told her she had made her choice and I respected it. She seemed disappointed that I did not beg. She said she thought I would fight for us. I asked what there was to fight for if she had already decided she did not want to be with me. Dinner ended in silence. She kept glancing at me, waiting for a breakdown or a dramatic scene. Instead, I ate my chicken and checked emails from potential clients for my side business. 3 days later, she moved out, taking the expensive coffee machine I bought for her birthday, the designer clothes I had partially funded, and a ridiculous $280 decorative throw pillow she insisted we needed. She left a few things behind, probably to maintain a reason to return. I boxed up her belongings and set them by the door. When she came back to pick them up, she was dressed like she had a photo shoot. Tight black dress, full makeup, expensive perfume. She tried to gauge my reaction. I stayed focused on a proposal for a new client. She told me I seemed to be handling things well. I said life goes on. She did not know I had just landed my biggest freelance client yet. A promising startup that needed a complete rebranding and a comprehensive digital strategy for $15,000. That was more than I had ever made in a single month from my side business. I felt hopeful for the first time in a long time. Terrence came over with pizza and energy drinks to check on me. He said I looked different, lighter, like someone had lifted a burden. I showed him my bank app. Without Aaliyah's demands, I was saving an extra $1,400 every month. For the first time in years, my savings account was growing instead of bleeding out. For days after the breakup, Aaliyah texted to ask how I was doing. I replied that I was good and staying busy with work. She sent, "I miss our deep conversations." I responded, "Cool," and put my phone in airplane mode to finish my work. Terrence said the response was cold and effective. 2 weeks later, Aaliyah's social media transformed overnight. Suddenly there were photos from expensive restaurants, designer shopping bags, and weekly manicures that cost more than my streaming subscriptions combined. A new man started appearing in the background of her stories. He was tall, blonde, perfectly groomed, and often photographed next to luxury details. Terrence did some harmless online sleuthing. The man was Darius Palmer, a 32-year-old investment banker at a prestigious firm downtown. He drove a BMW M5 and lived in a luxury high-rise. The implication was clear. She had found a bigger spender. I was not angry. I felt relieved. Evidence confirmed that I had dodged a financial and emotional bullet. Meanwhile, my side business gained momentum. The startup referred me to 3 more clients, each paying between $8,000 and $12,000. I worked 12-hour days between my regular job and freelance projects and loved every minute. I was building something of my own without resistance or guilt. Aaliyah continued to text with increasingly transparent attempts to reconnect. "Saw a commercial that reminded me of you. Remember that restaurant for your birthday?" I kept my replies short and neutral. Terrence called it the gray rock method. Be uninteresting and do not reward bad behavior with attention. The real test came when she called at 10:30 on a Friday. I answered, distracted by a strategy document for a potential 6-figure contract. She said she was out with Darius and his colleagues, who were discussing finance and cryptocurrency. She said she missed meaningful conversation with someone who listened. I told her to get back to her date. She asked to meet for coffee to clear the air. I said I was swamped and maybe another time. I hung up and returned to work. I did not feel even a flicker of doubt. Terrence called me a relationship monk for my composure. I simply felt focused and free. 3 months after the breakup, everything shifted upward. A client referred me to their parent company, and I suddenly had a corporate contract worth $180,000 annually with performance bonuses that could add another $60,000 if I hit targets. I was working 14-hour days and enthusiastic about every hour. The money was rewarding, but the independence was better. I stopped walking on eggshells around someone else's ego. I no longer budgeted to satisfy someone else's demands. I no longer faced lies about networking that were clearly dates. Terrence documented the transformation and teased me about how far I had come from couponing to make room for spa days. I moved to a better apartment in a nicer part of town, furnished it with things I actually liked, and bought a watch I had wanted for years. Nothing gaudy, just meaningful quality. Aaliyah's texts grew more frequent and more random, designed to keep conversation going. I started responding with thumbs-up emojis or single-word acknowledgments. She then made a mistake. She posted an Instagram story from Darius's apartment building, and the address number was visible. Terrence checked public information and found that rent started at over $4,000 a month. On her salary, she could not have been contributing meaningfully. The dynamic was obvious. My business continued to expand beyond any expectation I had. I landed 2 more major accounts, each worth over $150,000 annually. Demand was so high that I began turning down clients because I did not have enough capacity. I considered quitting my day job to focus entirely on building my agency. Aaliyah's social media began to sound desperate and performative. She kept posting about living her best life and surrounding herself with genuine people. It read like she was trying to convince herself. Late-night emotional calls restarted. She said she had made a mistake and that Darius was not what she thought. I said, okay, and ended the calls quickly. Mutual friends started reporting uncomfortable behavior. Aaliyah showed up at places where she knew I might be. Networking events, the coffee shop where I held client meetings, and even the gym near my office. At a monthly business event, she appeared in an expensive dress and spoke loudly about following my success. I politely excused myself. Colleagues gave me confused looks. Terrence saw the interaction and shook his head. He said it was painful to watch. Another time, at my favorite coffee shop, She accidentally bumped our table while I was meeting a potential client about a $300,000 contract. She forced herself into the conversation and called me a local celebrity. I moved the meeting elsewhere. Screenshots from friends showed Aaliyah hinting online that we were reconnecting. She crafted a narrative that did not exist. Terrence said it looked like someone trying to will reality into existence through captions. At the gym, she seemed to know my schedule and placed herself in my line of sight repeatedly. My trainer said she had asked about me, which was inappropriate. I switched gym locations to avoid the situation. The breaking point came when she showed up at my new apartment unannounced. I had just returned from a meeting with potential investors who were interested in helping me scale from a boutique consultancy to a full agency. Through the peephole, I saw Aaliyah looking worn and disheveled, very different from the polished woman who had walked out months earlier. She said we needed to talk about us. I did not invite her in. I asked what she wanted to discuss while standing in the doorway with my keys still in my hand. She said Darius had broken up with her because she was high maintenance and demanding, and because he had met someone who did not expect him to pay for everything. I said she should work on becoming financially independent and self-sufficient. She snapped that she was independent, then softened and said she thought Darius cared about her as a person. I said he cared about the return on investment, and when the cost-benefit ratio ceased to favor him, he moved on. She accused me of being cruel. I said I was being honest. Terrence called right then. He asked how the investor meeting went. I said it was promising, that they were considering an $800,000 investment to scale. Aaliyah's eyes widened. I had never told her about my business success or the investor interest. Terrence joked about dinner being on me and hung up. Aaliyah stared at me as if I had grown a second head. She asked if my side business was really worth that much. I said we would see how negotiations went. I could see the calculations forming in her expression. She said maybe we were too hasty with the breakup. I did not respond to that suggestion. Over the next few weeks, her effort intensified. She showed up at my apartment building, texted constantly, and reached out to my family and mutual friends. The messages became more explicit. She said she had been doing soul searching, that I understood her in a way Darius never did, that she was young and foolish but had grown. She said she saw an article about my business expansion and that she always believed I would succeed. That last part made me laugh. Terrence kept a private catalog of the posts and messages, adding dry commentary like a historian. He said it was the natural progression of a person trying to reconnect with a source of stability after losing a luxury arrangement. She tried to reinsert herself into my daily routine by appearing in the places I frequented. I received calls from acquaintances saying she had told them we were working things out. I corrected them every time. When subtlety failed, she escalated. Meanwhile, my business went from strong to overwhelming. I landed 3 more corporate accounts, each worth over $200,000 annually. I turned down additional prospects because my capacity was capped. I handed in my notice at my day job. My boss offered a promotion and a $15,000 raise to stay. I appreciated it but declined. I was making more than that in a single month with my agency. I hired my first 2 full-time employees, a talented graphic designer and a social media specialist, and moved into a modern office in a trendy part of downtown Austin. The conference room had a view of the skyline. Terrence toured the space and said it felt surreal. Our projected numbers for the first full year were $2,880,000 in revenue with enviable margins. I felt proud, focused, and centered. Aaliyah's desperation grew with each professional milestone. She started showing up at industry meetups, business conferences, and even followed my agency's accounts, leaving effusive comments on every post like, "So proud of you." It was embarrassing and unprofessional, and colleagues noticed. I blocked her from all business accounts to protect my brand and to avoid confusion among clients. The final confrontation came after I purchased a house in the hills. It was not ostentatious, but it was beautiful and a major step up from my apartments. The agency had closed its investment round, we had 8 full-time employees, and we were on pace for $3,200,000 in first-year revenue. One evening she appeared on my doorstep with a rolling suitcase and a determined look. She announced she had quit her job at the boutique and wanted to support my dreams and be a partner in every sense. She said she was taking online courses in digital marketing, as if that made the history disappear. Through the window, I could see Terrence parked across the street, because I had warned him she might try something dramatic. I told Aaliyah that she could not simply show up and move back into my life. She said she knew I still had deep feelings for her, that she could see it in my eyes. What she saw was confusion mixed with secondhand embarrassment. I told her I was in a serious relationship. Her face shifted through shock, anger, and disbelief. She demanded to know who the woman was and how long it had been. I told her it was not her business. Danielle and I had been dating for 4 months and were becoming serious. Danielle is intelligent, ambitious, financially independent, and genuinely supportive without expectation or manipulation. Aaliyah pleaded that she knew she hurt me but that she was different now. I asked what she had learned. She said money was not the most important thing in life, that love and connection mattered more than possessions. I could not help laughing. I told her she was making that speech on the porch of a home that was worth 4 times what I could afford when we were together. I said she had not learned that money does not matter. She learned I had more of it than she realized. She tried to backpedal and said she was proud of me and that it was not about the money. I said it was time to go. She asked for forgiveness and another chance. I told her I had forgiven her a long time ago, but forgiveness did not mean access. She lost her composure and began to cry, then shifted to anger, yelling that I was heartless and that I owed her another chance because of our history. She said Darius had ruined her life and that none of it was fair. I told her life is not fair, and that she chose Darius because he appeared to have more money. He chose someone less demanding. Those were decisions with consequences. Neighbors peeked through windows at the commotion. She finally grabbed her suitcase and stormed toward the street, throwing a parting shot that I would regret this and end up alone. I said I would rather be alone than with a person who valued me only for my bank account. Terrence jogged over as her rideshare pulled up. He said the scene was better than any movie. I told him to keep the recording private. He said he would. According to the occasional update from mutual friends, though I never ask, Aaliyah moved back in with her parents after a series of hurried relationships that fell apart when men saw patterns quickly. She started working at a call center, making around $30,000 annually, while posting online about taking time to discover her authentic self and focus on personal growth. The irony was not lost on people who knew the real story. I heard that she tried to contact Darius multiple times, but he cut her off. He discovered that she had been telling people they were practically engaged when they had been dating casually for a few months. He realized she had been using him as a financial provider while contributing little to the relationship. Someone said Darius laughed when he heard about her attempt to reconnect with me. He reportedly said she had burned that bridge thoroughly. Terrence remains my best friend and the unofficial historian of that chapter of my life. He maintains a digital folder labeled Project Bullet Dodged, containing screenshots of her messages and posts. He says the most beautiful part of the story is that she did me a favor, because her leaving created space for relentless focus. He is right. If she had stayed, I might not have built the agency with the same intensity. The business grew from a side project into a legitimate agency with a strong team, solid processes, and remarkable clients. We built campaigns that increased revenue for our partners and created tangible results that made referrals effortless. I stopped apologizing for ambition. I stopped shrinking to accommodate someone else's insecurities. I embraced the work and the responsibility that came with it. Danielle and I built a relationship rooted in mutual respect, shared values, and the understanding that support does not mean entitlement. She does not view my success as a resource to extract from but as a responsibility to steward well. She has her own career and accomplishments and does not need me to fund her identity. That difference changes everything. Every so often, I think about the moment Aaliyah told me we were better as friends. It was the unexpected door that opened the rest of my life. I learned that sometimes the most painful short-term event becomes the catalyst for everything good that follows. I learned to value myself apart from anyone's appeasement. I learned to say, okay, and move on. Months later, a final text from Aaliyah arrived. She said she had heard about my wedding through mutual friends and that she always believed I would find happiness and success. I did not respond. Some statements do not deserve acknowledgement. The life I live now is the one I built by choosing discipline over drama and clarity over chaos. I drive the same Honda to the office most days because it runs well and reminds me where this started. I still cook dinner at home when I can because the ritual is steadying. The office is filled with people who believe in what we are building and who know their work matters. I carry the lessons of that season without bitterness. If you strip away the noise, the story is simple. Aaliyah wanted luxury without cost, status without substance, and attention without reciprocity. That formula works only as long as someone keeps paying. When the numbers did not add up for her new arrangement, she tried to return to the old one. By then, that chapter was closed. I wanted a partner who valued me for who I am regardless of my bank account. It took losing the wrong person to make space for the right one. I did not need to teach anyone a lesson. I needed to live mine. The clarity of that decision changed everything about the man I became. Terrence will occasionally send me one of his old screenshots with a brief caption, and we will laugh for a minute and move on. He says the chapter reads like a case study in boundaries. He is not wrong. It is not a revenge story. It is a story about choosing dignity. I remember the quiet of that first night after she moved out. The boxes stacked by the door, the apartment suddenly larger. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop, opened a blank document, and wrote the first lines of the proposal that would change my business. The silence was not empty. It was possibility. I hit send and did not look back. The investor meeting that Aaliyah overheard on speakerphone eventually led to an infusion of capital and mentorship that accelerated the agency's growth. We did not simply accept money, we accepted accountability. We built systems, hired diligently, and served clients with measurable outcomes. The work was exhausting, but it was honest. I think about that porch conversation whenever I am tempted to let nostalgia rewrite reality. Memory can be gentle to the parts that once felt good and cruel to the parts that nearly broke you. The facts do not change. She left to pursue a richer man, and by doing so, freed me to pursue the life I was meant to build. That freedom was worth more than anything she ever took. On the day Danielle and I exchanged vows, the ceremony was small and beautiful. Terrence stood beside me, steady as always. There was a moment during the reception when I saw Danielle laughing with my team, the people who had walked through the long nights and tight deadlines and shared victories. I felt profoundly grateful that I had protected the space for a relationship that grew without entitlement. Aaliyah's chapter now reads like a warning label that I no longer need to read. Every ambitious person faces distractions dressed as destiny. The difference is not in the distraction but in the decision. My decision was made on a Tuesday night over grilled chicken and roasted vegetables when I chose peace over performance. I chose to let what wanted to leave. The agency closes quarters now with reviews that measure impact, not just impressions. We take on fewer clients than we could, because we will not promise what we cannot deliver. There is strength in saying no. There is focus in refusing to be everywhere for everyone. The same principle saved my personal life. I do not hate Aaliyah. Hatred is a tax on energy I would rather invest elsewhere. I hope she finds the independence she once dismissed. I hope she learns the difference between being cared for and being kept. Those lessons cannot be outsourced. What I keep is not rage or regret. I keep the memory of a calm, okay, the power of a boundary, and the quiet of a kitchen table where a new future began. I keep the knowledge that dignity wins in the long run. I keep the life that followed, built with intention, defended with clarity, and shared with people who do not confuse love with access. The last message she sent sits unread and will remain that way. I do not need the final word. I needed the final decision, and I made it. The story concludes not with a dramatic twist, but with a steady truth. I moved forward, and I did not look back. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.